One of the biggest college football games and rivalries happens this weekend. Texas versus OU, the Red River rivalry, something we have got to talk about because even though this is always an exciting game, I think this year's matchup in particular offers some really intriguing points that we are going to talk about. And before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a T for Texas or an O for Oklahoma. Who do you have winning the Red River rivalry? Let me know down in the comments. Let me know what you think the score will be. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoy this content, be sure to like and comment down below. Those interactions, though small, are massive to content creators such as myself and getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. But with all that being said, let's talk about this game. And this game, when we're trying to talk about what we think can happen, is almost a losing effort right off the bat. I always like to think of this game as if you grabbed a friend, filled up a barn full of hay, shoved him in the hay, and said, "Find the needle within this giant haystack," only to have that needle in your pocket. That's what predicting this game feels like. There are so many things that go into this game every single year, and in this year in particular, there is a lot up in the air. So let's go ahead and start at the very beginning. Both of these teams are coming into this game coming off of a week where they played an opponent that historically has given them trouble. If we look at Texas, they're coming off of a game against TCU. We know what Gary Patterson is as far as a defensive mind. One of the brighter defensive minds in all of football and a true trailblazer. Texas was able to go there and get a really solid win. A close game, but a solid win nonetheless. That's a program that has given the Texas Longhorns a lot of trouble over the past few years, and at the end of the day, Texas was able to go in there and find a way to win. Much the same for Oklahoma. When we look at what they were able to do, Oklahoma had their first real road game of the season, going to Kansas State, a team that has beaten them twice in a row. Oklahoma's offense has been all over the place this year. They are not the offense we're accustomed to, and in fact, they rank outside the top 40 offenses in all of college football, which, if we would have said that before the season started, a whole lot of people would have called you crazy. That's just what we've come to expect out of the Sooners offense, but they've been inconsistent this year. There have been flashes. But last week against Kansas State, we actually saw Oklahoma's offense really start to put together some signs of the Oklahoma offense we've become more accustomed to. The running game actually showed up more in that game than we've seen, which is really key, especially moving into this game. And that's one of the first interesting parallels that I want to hit. That through each of these teams playing a team that has historically given them trouble, they each found a way to win that will be key in this game right here. We saw Bijan have a ton of touches last week against TCU, and we might see the same thing this week. Bijan Robinson is having just about as good of a season as anybody in college football, showing that he absolutely is one of the best running backs in all of the nation, something that I think many of us expected, but many of us were very surprised when he was left off of the lists, such as the top 50 players in college football, the list by Pro Football Focus, something we talked about during the summer. Bijan Robinson is a force to be reckoned with. We saw that last week against TCU, and that's something that if you're the Texas offense, you're really excited that that aspect of your game, even though Bijan has been sensational all year, came in the manner it did. The way everything came about, where it was a close game, and you relied on that power running back that has the speed, precision, and he delivered. That's big for the Texas Longhorns going into this game. Much like for the Oklahoma Sooners, you played an opponent that has given you so much trouble. You found your running game in that game. Your offensive line still needs work, but there were times where they at least looked better than before. But at the end of the day, that offensive line for Oklahoma is one that is going to need to be better against the Texas Longhorns. But much the same can be said for Texas. The Texas offensive line is really in for something against Oklahoma's defensive front. Which gets me into my next area, that this game is best on best, and that's what we love to see. This game right here features Texas's high-powered ground game, which has been the best aspect of their team, in my opinion, going up against Oklahoma's rush defense, which is a top 10 rush defense nationally, which is only allowing backs to average around 2.6 yards per attempt. That's really stellar. Now, in fairness, they haven't faced a running back like Bijan. The closest they've come is Deuce Vaughn, and even though they were able to mitigate Deuce Vaughn on the ground, Deuce Vaughn had a day catching the ball out the backfield. And that's something I absolutely believe we will see from Bijan, and if not Bijan, one of the running backs, because Steve Sarkisian, you can bet your bottom dollar, saw Kansas State have that success, and that's going to be something he's looking to implement. So I always love when we get these matchups of best on best. We're going to get Bijan Robinson against a really good rush defense, and we're going to find out how good Texas's rushing attack is in comparison to how good Oklahoma's rush defense is. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Another intriguing storyline in this is the quarterback play. We have Spencer Rattler, who many, including myself, thought was going to have a really solid season this year. His first full offseason under Lincoln Riley, but he's been in the program for long enough to have learned under other experienced quarterbacks and Lincoln Riley. And even though Spencer has shown flashes of the talent we all know he hasn't been able to put it together consistently enough. Now, in fairness, I think some of that blame goes to the offensive line and them just not being able to give him the time. Another portion of that blame goes to Oklahoma's non-existent running game, which has been paramount for their passing game. Teams don't respect Oklahoma's rushing attack right now, and so they're making Spencer beat them underneath, which is directly in opposition to what we usually see Oklahoma's passing game being built off of, which I think is why there's some fan frustration. But that doesn't come until the running game comes in the manner we're accustomed to. On the other side, we have Casey Thompson, who's a legacy of Oklahoma, who comes from Oklahoma, and wasn't even the starting quarterback of the Texas Longhorns when this year started. That was Hudson Card. However, ever since Casey Thompson has had the job, this Texas offense has looked much stronger. And that's not a knock on Hudson. I even thought that Hudson Card was a very talented quarterback. I think he's going to be just fine. He's going to get coached up, learn from this year. He's a very talented individual that has a very bright future, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what that future holds. But I don't think there's an argument that this team is playing better around Casey Thompson right now, and Casey's mobility is going to be something we have to watch. Casey's mobility is going to allow Oklahoma's defense to be a little bit off balance, which I'm very interested to see how that affects the running game. When we look at Oklahoma's defense this year, they've been successful in stopping the rush, but running quarterbacks have hurt them, i.e. Martinez for Nebraska. But now my big question is what happens when you get an athletic quarterback in the manner of Casey Thompson with a running back such as Bijan Robinson? And sure, we can point to last week, Kansas State, but Skylar Thompson was a little bit banged up and he didn't have that full repertoire that really makes him so dangerous. That's going to be something that is very interesting to see. Luckily for the Sooners, you have got a solid rush defense plus one of the top edge rushers in the nation in Nick Bonito. That guy's having a stellar season thus far, and he's going to need to be very active in this game. So in theory, we have that matchup of best on best. We have the interesting dynamic of the quarterbacks, one with a history of being associated with Oklahoma, now playing for the Texas Longhorns, and the other, a guy who is coming into this year with as much hype as anybody in the nation, and it hasn't really come together just yet. What a better game than to put everything together than the Red River Rivalry, arguably the biggest regular season game they will play in this year, especially when the future of Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12 is up in the air. It's up in the air in the sense of we know they're leaving the Big 12, we just don't know when. But this could be the last Big 12 Red River rivalry, so you want to get your stamp of approval on that. That's a really big thing. These teams are going to really want to capitalize on that. And look, they're already going to want to win this game, but that's just another layer added. When we look at this across the board, Texas's offense has been fantastic ever since Casey Thompson has come in. Everything has been really clicking. But as much as Bijan is going to be important to this game, I cannot have the understatement of how important of an individual such as Xavier Worthy will be. For many of you Texas fans, you'll know I've been high on the prospect of Xavier Worthy for the Longhorns for quite some time. I think his speed offers a ton to make a defense really respect you, especially in conjecture with a Bijan Robinson. When you have that speed, you're able to really keep a defense on their heels. They can't sell out against the run or they'll get beat over top, And if they sell out to stop over top, Bijan's just going to run it on you all day long. But that's exactly where I bring up earlier. Nick Bonito is going to be massive, and Oklahoma's secondary is really going to get tested in this game. This is going to be a game where Oklahoma needs their secondary to show up, because it cannot just all come down to the pass rush for the Oklahoma Sooners. This is a defense that has ability, but they are going to get tested. This is a game where we have two of the brighter minds in offensive schematics in football going at each other. So these defenses are going to have everything they can handle thrown at them, and it is going to be unbelievably fascinating to see how they handle that. At the end of the day, we know how big this game is. It's a rivalry. This may be the last time this rivalry happens in the Big 12. It will certainly continue to happen, but maybe not in its current capacity. And on top of that, this game will be big in deciding who goes to the Big 12 championship. Right now, Oklahoma and Texas, both undefeated in Big 12 play. Looking at Oklahoma State, that's going to be a really interesting triangle. And at the end of the day, not only is this big for Big 12 championship implications, but also the college football playoff. Because even though Oklahoma may not be winning games in the fashion many expected them to, they're still undefeated. And this game would be big in their course to trying to get a bid into the college football playoff this year. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to be a team making an argument at the end of the year. You want to be a team that made statements during the year. Because if you're making an argument at the end of the year, that means you've put your fate in other teams' hands. And what do I mean when I say that? And essentially what I mean is if you have that loss on your record, you're now relying on more teams to lose. The silver lining this year is we've had a lot of top teams losing, but you're still putting your faith in other teams dropping the ball as opposed to you going through the year making statements and taking the argument away from anybody else. That's where you want to be. And that's going to be huge for the Oklahoma Sooners. But you can bet your bottom dollar that Texas would love nothing more than to disrupt that argument. They would love to create the argument and take away the statement. This game right here is always one that is an absolute treat. I cannot wait for this one right here. There are so many intriguing matchups. How the Oklahoma offense is going to go at the Texas defense. Texas's defense has been good at times, but at other times has really struggled this year. They've shown flashes, but they are going to need some consistency, especially if Oklahoma is able to find their offensive identity. Because if they find their offensive identity, they are going to go full throttle. And look, we've talked about at the beginning of this video how Oklahoma's offense really doesn't click in that manner unless they have their running game going. And there has been some stipulations wondering if Lincoln is holding the running game back because he only has 2 scholarship backs. This is a game where nothing can be held back because you need to win this game, and you have to pull out all of the stops, especially when you look on the other side, and they have the weapons and talent to really be a dangerous team. This offensive game plan from both institutions is going to be a masterpiece to watch, but even aside from the offenses and the high-powered offensive minds, we get PK taking on Lincoln Riley for the first time. We get Alex Grinch taking on Steve Sarkisian for the first time. It is just going to be a ton of fun, and there's a ton of intrigue surrounding this game. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.